Hello and welcome back to a Hearts of Iron 4 tutorial. My name is Hydronum and this is Italy. We're going through part 3 at the moment, which is going to be a lot of combat division, statistics, numbers, some basics on design, and things to keep in mind when you are designing divisions. Now there's again a lot to go through, but the last two episodes have been kind of long. I apologise for that. But I've also included a save game if you guys want to follow along completely at home. It should be down below in the description. It should link to a Dropbox download. It should be Italy episode 3, and that save game should be just dropped straight to the save game folder for the Hearts of Iron 4. That folder is located in your documents, Paradox Interactive, Hearts of Iron 4, save games, and you drop save games into there. From there you should be able to load the game and follow along completely. And you should be in exactly the same position with exactly the same damaged infantry, as you can see. Same position, same everything. That way you can follow along completely, especially if there are RNG elements like the Spanish Civil War kicking off or stuff like that. You can follow along, but have a lot of the RNG stuff not really matter, and you can follow along in your own pace, or you can follow along with the save game. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about using army tradition and army experience. We have a few different design templates. If we go over to the recruit and deploy, we can actually see we've got 5. We've got the standard infantry, we've got elite mountaineers, we've got our little tankets, we've got colonial infantry, and we've got cavalry. We are going to hit this button here, and we are going to begin designing. Now, at first, it will pop open with, say, this template here. It's opened for me on Division di Fratrinia, which is our standard infantry division. But, yeah, we're going to have a quick look at this. We can see over here we've got the combat and support. These are the guys who'll do most of the fighting, and this is the support stuff which increases the stats of a unit but doesn't add whip. Okay, it's time to actually get into a lot more of the numbers side of things. So if that's a bit of a problem, don't worry too much. All you need to know is more soft attack is good. Your infantry is your basis for your organization and HP, and armored divisions add armor and usually add piercing as well. Piercing goes through armor, armor protects against soft attacks. Very simple stuff. Okay, now let's go straight over into soft attacks and stuff. We've got soft attack. This is your number of attacks you can make per hour against a division that has no hardness. For instance, if you were to have a division of pure infantry, if you go down here, you've got the bar that shows how hard or soft it is. There's actually 2 different colors here. I'll just quickly add a few things to fill it up. You can see the green here shows the infantry, that's its softness, and the yellow, that shows hardness. Now I'll quickly remove those. You can see that this, by default, is 100% soft. So when an enemy makes attacks, every single soft attack that the enemy does against the unit is counted as an attack against them. Whereas if the unit was 100% hard, it would receive none of the hard attacks, but would instead receive all of the... it would receive none of the soft attacks, but would instead receive all of the hard attacks. If you've got, say, 50-50, then that division would take half the number of soft attacks and half the number of hard attacks that an enemy does. So if an enemy's got 500 soft attack and 20 hard attack, then against a full infantry division it would make 500 attacks. If it's going against a pure armored division, it would only make 20. So you've got your soft attacks, which is damage against infantry, and hard attacks with damage against tanks. If that division was to have 50-50, then it would take 250 of the soft attacks and 10 of the hard attacks, assuming the hard attack was 20. I assume that's what I said. I've frankly forgotten, I'm sorry. Okay, so that is the very basics of attack. Attack is very important for most of your units. It's how much damage you'll be able to dish out. Now, air attack, you can see underneath the hard attack, is attack against aircraft. This is only used in one place, and this is when support aircraft are doing dive bombs against you. When the enemy has close air support, if you've got something with air attack in there, it will make attacks against the aircraft that are dive bombing them. So, the more air attack you've got, the less effective the enemy aircraft will be, and the more casualties they'll take in the fight. But then again, you're sacrificing other different things to get the air attack there. But because the air attack is very specific to tank variants and an actual artillery piece type. So that's air attacks. Defense. This is how many attacks a unit can dodge in on the defense. If an enemy is attacked, then this is the number that pulls up for the defense. As I'd explained before, you've got defense and you've got breakthrough, which is breakthrough is defense on the attack. So a single point of defense is a chance of dodging one attack. If an enemy attacks you and you've got, say, they've got 5 attacks and you've got 10 defense, then those 5 attacks will have a 10% each of actually hitting you. If, say, they've got 11, then 10 of the attacks will have a 10% chance of hitting you, and the 11th would have a 40%. If your defense is higher than the attacks, then each attack made against you is 1/4 as likely to hit you as if you had less defense than they have attack. It does the attacks against it, and you get the chance to dodge. So if you've got really high defense, you're less likely to take damage on the defense, so you're able to hold out longer. Breakthrough is, as I'd said, it's defense on the attack. So when you're attacking, this is how able you are to dodge the enemy attacks that are coming in and allow you to fight for longer on the offense. If you can maintain your organization, you can continue the offense a lot faster. Instead of stopping in the next province once you've reached it, healing up, and then attacking again, you can continue straight on, which is very useful. Okay, armor. This is a comparison versus piercing. An army that has armor has armor up to a certain point. If an enemy unit has piercing higher than that armor, then the armor is ineffective. But if the piercing is lower, then the armor is effective. If armor is effective, what it allows you to do is the unit that cannot penetrate the armor receives 50% more organization damage from your attacks, and it will only be able to do 50% of its attack damage to organization to your divisions. So say that it's got piercing, you essentially take half damage from, it doesn't have enough piercing, then you would take half damage from the attacks that the enemy division makes towards you. This makes mixing armored units into some of your infantry, or, as I'm going in later, mechanized. It allows you to add armor to your divisions and give you the ability to cause more damage and to take less damage, which is frankly awesome. Armor is usually gained through stuff like the mechanized divisions, or by mixing in armored variants like tanks, light tanks, tank destroyers, and I believe trucks have a hardness of 10% as well. So you get some from there as well. Not armor. Yeah, that gives you hardness. I don't think trucks give any armor at all. No, sorry. Didn't mean to mislead you there. Alright, piercing. This is usually your ability to punch. It's increased through improved infantry equipment. Infantry Equipment 1 versus Infantry Equipment 3 is a huge difference in their piercing. Infantry Equipment 1 is unable to pierce a level 2 tank unit, level 2 light tank unit's armor, whereas level 3 is. So it makes a lot of the older models of tanks and the like obsolete as you go along and improve the equipment. They just become a normal unit at that point. Alright, initiative. This is the improvements to your division's likelihood of reinforcing a battle. If you're in a battle and you don't have all of the units that are engaged in the combat on the front line, but there is space to move a unit into the front line, initiative increases the chance that unit will have every hour of getting there. If you increase your initiative by, say, 5%, then every hour you will have a 5% extra chance of getting involved in that combat, which is exceedingly useful if you're going on the offense, and filling up the front line to put out as much damage as possible is very, very important. It also helps on the defense if you're moving units to fill in gaps or potential weaknesses, or positions that have been attacked and are slowly losing men. So you can move your men in relatively quickly and have them actually get to the front line so that they're not sitting back and watching as all of your previous units run out of organization and flee. Even though you've got 5 or 10 people sitting back ready to get involved in the fight, they haven't rolled high enough to get into the fight, so they all retreat. Okay, Entrenchment is the ability to dig in, as I've gone in before. The Entrenchment here is a bonus to base value, so you can dig in 5 extra from the engineer company, I believe. Yes, that it adds +5 Entrenchment, which is frankly awesome. It means you can get yourself 5 more Entrenchment, giving you more defense. Alright, combat width. This is how wide a unit is. A unit can only fit into the battle if there's the combat width to support it. This is very, very important if you're, say, defending a choke point, or you've got a large number of units that are attacking into a province. You can attack all from one province, but you may not have the combat. Your units may be too fat, so to speak, to fit. This combat width to fit in the front lines can be improved by having the combat width lower. A lower combat width will mean that more individual units can be put forward. Of course, that comes with its own drawbacks, like lower soft hard attack, lower defense, lower HP, etc, etc. Or by attacking from multiple directions so that the combat width increases, and the overall combat size, front size, not width. I shouldn't be saying width for that because that would be incredibly confusing, I'm sorry. The combat front is bigger, that way you can fit more width in. If you've got too much width, you can't fit in the extra divisions and they sit in reserves until there's space. So that's the basics of width. Okay, on the side here you've got the equipment costs, how many men, training time, infantry equipment, support equipment, and any other things it might need, like, say, artillery, mechanized, motorized, anti-air, all that can be listed there. Over here, let's have a quick look at the base stats. Maximum speed. Infantry has a base speed of 4 kilometers an hour. It's very, very stock standard. That's about marching speed. It's actually a bit less than a standard troops marching speed, but that does take into account that terrain and other things would hamper a unit's ability to march at full speed all the time, especially when you're marching with several thousand men behind you. HP. This is how much HP damage you can receive before the enemy is before the unit is destroyed. the HP is usually increased by using infantry divisions, and your armor won't have much in the way of HP. Organization is the ability of your troops to fight and sustain themselves during combat. If you've got really high organization, a unit will be able to stay in the fight longer, and say if it's advancing upon an enemy position, it can land in the position and keep marching if it has high organization. Recovery rate. This is how quickly organization returns to the unit, and this is how much per hour it will increase if not in combat. The recovery rate is modified by other things like being stationary, the weather, terrain, and how good your logistical supply is, but that is the base for this unit. Reconnaissance. This is the ability for your units to scout ahead, as it says. This is what I talked about with the initiative before in battles, where you get a second chance at selecting the counter tactic. This is a straight comparison of reconnaissance, highest reconnaissance unit versus highest reconnaissance unit on each side, and then slightly modified by generals or field marshals level, and then modified again by any other modifiers that general has, like trickster. If your reconnaissance is higher than the enemies, then you get the initiative. If it's equal or within a certain percentage of each other, then it will be, you will have an equal thing and nobody will get a second chance at rolling against the other one. And if your unit in fact has less, then the opposing general will have the initiative and they will be able to roll that second chance. Very important, this is improved by recon divisions. There's a support battalion sits over here. I'm not sure if there's any units that actually have reconnaissance built into them. Let's have a quick look. Mobile cav. No, I don't think there is. Okay. Up next is Suppression. This is the ability for you to push down enemy revolts within a state that is occupied. This is only important if you're occupying a country and they've either capitulated but are allied in a war and there's an ally still fighting. So, although they've given up, the people inside the nation have not given up. This suppression is all about putting down the resistance to stop them sabotaging your network or causing your network problems. If you've got a lot of suppression, they will sabotage your factories, they will lower the amount of supplies you'll get through. Units walking through the area will actually take attrition thanks to the partisan activities like ambushes and the like. So you'll lose man and equipment, and it's just pain in the butt. The suppression is the ability for a unit to put it down. Usually it's a suppression of +1 per unit. Different units do have different ones, with cavalry being one of the highest at 2. So if you're going to be making divisions to sit back, it's probably and guard these areas so that your supplies can move through unhampered, it may be worth using cavalry and military police support attachment to stamp out the resistance. Okay, after that is the weight. This is how much it will require to... This is how many boats it needs to transport from one to the other. Well, boats and aircraft. If you're using paratroopers, which I'll get into soon, then their weight is important for that as well. Supply use. This is how many supplies they use per day. Very straightforward. Each unit will require a certain amount of supplies to stay at full organization, and if they don't have full supplies, they usually have a reserve of supplies for a couple of days, and then they will start losing organization and even suffer attrition for not having enough supplies to keep the men fed, the equipment running, or any of that. A unit that doesn't have enough supply will fight worse. Way worse. Up to a -33% penalty for having no supply at all. I believe it used to be a lot worse in Hearts of Iron 3, but that's neither here nor there since this is in Hearts of Iron 3. Reliability. This is a % bonus applied to the equipment to have it run more effectively. If just about every piece of equipment has a reliability. You've got your standard infantry 1 and 2, which has a reliability of 90%. Infantry equipment 3 has 80%. Your tanks will have a reliability, they will break down as well, so this is the odds that you will have a breakdown that will destroy or remove that equipment from your pool and essentially need to be replaced. This is just your, this is just stuff based around standard movement attrition as well as battle attrition. Sometimes the equipment will break more often because of the reliability than it will damage done against you. If you've got very unreliable equipment, then your equipment will not be in fighting shape and you'll find yourself needing to build even more to keep up with the replacement. If you increase this, say, by 20%, then, and the base was 80, the reliability is not now 100%. It's 20% of 80, which is 16%, so it ends up going to 94%. The reliability of an 80% unit with plus 20% reliability will be 96%. Yeah, 94%, sorry. Okay, after that is trickleback. This is what percentage of troops that are killed or injured in the combat will be resurrected and thrown into your manpower pool. If you've got a trickleback of 50%, half of the people shot in the face will be resurrected by voodoo magic and then thrown back into your manpower pool. The other half won't be able to survive. It's very important for manpower-starved nations and is improved by a support battalion that is the field hospital. So that will add trickleback. It'll also add a protection against experience loss. When you lose troops, you lose experience when you replace them because the troops that come back are greenhorns. If you've got experience loss minus 50%, then that means you lose only half of what you would have lost experience-wise for the newbies coming in, which is awesome. It really is. Okay, so those are the basic stats. Here are some adjusters. This shows different terrain types, movement bonuses, penalties, attack bonuses, penalties, and defense bonuses, penalties. Different things like support equipment, infantry and the like will add different points to these adjusters. You'll find that things like tanks are not very good at all at attacking into, say, mountains or hills, but they might be pretty good at dealing with forts. It's that type of stuff. Okay, so that is the very basics of the stats. And holy crap, that's already 20 minutes. I haven't even gone into designing divisions yet. Jeez, temptation is to just call it there, but I'm not going to. This will have to be another 40 to 1 hour long tutorial episode. After this, it really should start going a lot quicker, I promise you. Okay, up next we've got the army design. By default we've got the this selected here. Let's have a quick look at it. This shows that this division cannot be parachuted. Okay, so if you've got paratroopers unlocked, replace infantry with paratroopers, you should be right to go. Division equipment, if you click this button, it'll show you all of the division equipment that it is allowed to use. And you can select things on and off. For instance, you could say, I don't want you to be using any Ethiopian equipment because that's totally crap. And instead, I'd rather you only be using Italian weapons. But, frankly, you don't really need to be going into this at all. That's useful if you're going to be using improved tank designs, or if you want to keep old designs specifically around for whatever reason, like you want to use only your really crappy stuff for defending, and you want those units only be using, say, equipment 1 and 2. That way they don't get reinforced with the newer equipment as it comes through, but they have to keep the old equipment, and they get anything that flows back. Okay, So over here you've got the symbol that denotes the division. As you can see, it's infantry. If we click it, there is a large list of different little division symbols. You can add any of them to it, or you can hit default to return that to the little infantry. If you want a little picture of a tank, then have tanks in there. But usually stuff like this is very useful for figuring out what division you've got, where it is, and what you're going to do with it. Alright, you've got here the name of the division, can be altered by clicking on it. If you click on this, you can go through and choose one of the other templates to go over. For instance, if we click this, we can have a look at the template for the light tank. And what you can see is it's got some cavalry, it's got some motorized, it's got a little light tank. Okay, let's head back to this. Over here, we've got the whether these guys are reserves, default, or elites. These are the chevrons that I've talked about before. You just click the button and it selects it as that. Okay, support. These are divisions that add, as I said, bonuses or sometimes some slight penalties, like this will add some extra weight and lower organization a little for being there, but it adds more defense, breakthrough, soft attack, etc, etc. These don't take up combat width, allowing you more space to build in here with other people. So if I was to say add way more infantry, every time I add something it adds weight, but if I click over here it doesn't add any more weight. And if I go into here and select an artillery, then as you can see I've got artillery here. Now I've added even more artillery. This has got a combat width of 3. I said weight, I meant width. It's got a combat width of 3, which brings it up to 21. Whereas if I was to get rid of this, it's not going to get rid of anything, but it's not going to give me any combat width, but it will change some of the stats. So yeah, let's quickly reset that. We are going to need to alter a lot of the divisions. We've frankly got some pretty poor division templates by default. They will do the job, but they're not a very good job. I'm going to head over to the tank division. This one, it starts with a bunch of cavalry, some motorized, and a tank. Now, cavalry is essentially slightly faster infantry that requires more equipment. Motorized is very fast infantry with the requirements for motorized as well. It needs less equipment than horses, but it also needs more manpower. So, do I actually want to change that? I don't think I do. For now, it should be fine until we can grind up some other stuff. We're going to go back to this here. Since this is going to be the backbone of pretty much our entire army, we are going to alter the basic division here. We're going to want it to be a lot more defensive than it is. We are going to add in a few infantry to the default division thing. And I'm going to, I'll add 2, and I will add, I'll add 1 and 2 artillery, like so, bringing the combat width to 20, which is good. 20 is a number that is easily divisible by 80, 40, etc. 20 goes into them really well. 20 and 40 are the optimum sizes for units, if you want to be taking no penalties at all. Apparently the worst size you can have is 23 because it gives more penalties than it gives you in bonuses, so that's no good. But we are going to go with the current meta at the moment. The meta isn't really too important, but a lot of people like to go with the 7-2, which as you can see I've got 7 infantry, 2 artillery. Needs a lot of artillery of course, but really high soft attack, really good defense, decent breakthrough, good HP, organization's a little lower than it otherwise was, but that doesn't really make too much of a difference because it's got enough piercing to get through the defaults it's got enough piercing to get through a decent amount of armor, and if we add another support artillery to the side, we get even more soft attack. We get exactly 40 organization, lots of HP as well. but that soft attack is going to be exceedingly useful. So this is going to be our default infantry. It's going to be exceedingly heavy on artillery, which is fine. We've got the factories for it. So once we've put in everything we need here, we just hit down and down here and save. Now let's quickly go through designing a new infantry template from scratch. Most of the time you probably don't want to do this because it's more expensive, but if you don't have the unlocked slots and the like, it's easy enough to do. So your first choice is to, you've got it completely empty. You can add a support or a combat first, doesn't make a difference. We are going to go through it nice and quick. Your first one only costs 5 army experience to add. So if we say make this a light tank division, we can add as many light tanks as we like at 5 each. Now if we add a new group battalion, then it costs 25. And if we add a new mobile battalion, it will cost 25. It's 5 for the unit here, and 20 for unlocking that as a valid option. See, now all of this is only 5 to cost. So we can add in as much of those as we like in there, but we're not going to. That's just the basics of all of that. If you don't have enough experience to save it, then you can't save it. Pretty simple. And if you hit reset, it'll just go back to that. Now, another thing you can do is you can click there, and if you hit duplicate, it costs you nothing to do. You create a new division, and you will have you will then be able to modify this without modifying the other template the other template you had. This is important because every template that is in use, that is updated, will automatically push out the new update to the troops. That's very important because if we have a look here, we've got a standard infantry division. We can see that they already need a lot of artillery. And if we have a look here, we do need stuff to replace them. We'll get to that soon. But the infantry now requires tons of artillery. We kind of don't have it. But that's completely fine. We are going to get it. Since artillery is really, really important, we are going to up that to 3. We're probably, we're going to need to import some more tungsten as well. Our requirements for motorized is currently filled. Let's scale those back. Light tanks, that's fine. We'll get that up to 3, and we'll begin building the fighters. We only need to replace 3, and it shouldn't take too long to build. Okay, quickly trade away for a little bit more tungsten. Portugal's a good non-belligerent, we'll grab it from them. Okay, excellent. So that is the basics of army design. Now let's have a quick look at the different division types that will be going into your army design later. When you start up the game, usually you'll start with cavalry, automatically designed. You'll also have infantry, and I think those are the only 2 that you are guaranteed to have at the start. Everything else would need to be researched. Some nations will already start with some tech research, but some will not. If we go into here, you can see that Artillery 1 is actually a research required one. We've also got anti-air, which is your ability to take out aircraft with your troops. Like I said before, it's good for fighting in your fighting close air support aircraft that are bombing the hell out of you. It's also got a fairly decent amount of piercing. If you just click on them, then you'll bring up this. If you hold shift and you click on a second one, you'll in fact open both of them at once. So you can compare the 2 very quickly and easily. Now this adds air attack. Anti-tank is for adding more piercing to your divisions. It adds a lot of piercing. It also adds a good amount of heart attack. If you're coming across a number of heavy vehicles, then it might be decent to a decent idea to add anti-tank to it. Now, the anti-air can be the poor man's anti-tank. It adds a lot of piercing. It's not anywhere near as much as anti-tank, but it's enough to pull some divisions over the line. So you'll be able to maybe pierce that enemy's tank that's coming at you, and you'll be able to fight off the aircraft. But if you really need the heart attack to do more damage, then your anti-tank is far, far away the better option. Okay, we've also got the different improvements of artillery, and then you got rocket artillery. This is basically the murder infantry artillery. It doesn't have much in the way of defense, but it has a huge amount of soft attack. It is insanely good against infantry and other things that don't have much hardness. Now, this also does improve motorized rocket artillery, which is, I believe it's in infantry. Yeah. Here is a little variant you can create of the motorized, which is motorized artillery, which means it can keep up with motorized divisions, giving a lot of soft attack. Quite a lot of it, too. Okay. What else? That goes into the basics of those. Anti-tank is good for killing tanks. Anti-aircraft is good for giving a bit of piercing, but dealing with aircraft as well. Artillery does all of your soft attack, and this is a more expensive way to get a lot of soft attack out. Like, really a lot of soft attack. Okay, up next we've got armor. There are several different types of armor. You've got your light, medium, heavy, and if you head down here, you've got your modern armor. So you've got the 3 variants of your light, you've got your 3 variants of heavy, you've got 3 variants of medium. You've also got a super heavy, and you've got the modern here. Light, the light vehicles add a small bit of armor, very useful early game for giving your divisions a little bit of defense, and it'll help them move pretty quick. Their speed is 12k an hour, you add a motorized division as backup, and you just go zoom. These are what you'll be using once you've made a break through the lines to cut off the enemy and do encirclements and the like. You've got heavy tanks over here, which are essentially your main forward combat tanks. These guys have the harder amounts of soft attack and hard attack, and they've also got a lot more armor, but they are incredibly slow. They are best used with cavalry. They are not as slow as infantry, but the heavy tank are best supported by cavalry, so that the cavalry is the part that slows it down, cavalry being slightly faster than infantry. Got your medium tanks, which is a good balance between your heavy tanks and your light tanks. It gets speed up to about 10k an hour, and allows you to do your encirclements while also having the defense and punching power. Not quite as much as the heavy, but a really good amount. It's a really, really good balance. But the perfect balance, I do believe, is in the modern tank. These guys go fast, they hit hard, they've got really good defense, almost as good as the super heavy tank, but not quite. And their variants are pretty good too. Now, I've said variants a few times, I should talk about them. Tanks, you've got your default tank. You've also got 3 extra variants that you can research and then produce. This took me ages to notice. Initially, I felt like such an idiot when I did notice it, but all of these buttons can actually be researched. You've got your light tank destroyer. This will add more hard attack and piercing to a tank division that you can build. These are all built separately, by the way, so you can have 4 variants of the L3. You've got the L3, the L3 tank destroyer, L3 artillery piece, and L3 anti-air. But these are how you add stuff like artillery and tank destroyers and anti-aircraft to tank divisions without slowing them down. So you've got that also without making their armor less worthwhile. Now, the tank destroyer is very high piercing, high hard attack. You got your artillery, which is a lot lower armor, a lot lower hard attack, but it's got a lot higher soft attack. And you've got your anti-air, which adds anti-air capabilities. It's got less armor. It's got, yeah, it's like the aircraft gun you drag behind, but it's now a tank. Alright, and you've got a variant of all of those for all your tiers here. And that should about cover the tanks. When putting the tanks into a division, usually you can have a mix of light and heavy, but you wouldn't want it. The light tank's really good thing is that it goes really fast, and it's got a little bit of armor, whereas the heavy tank, it's got punching power, and it can defend really well. Well, not defend, but it's got really good breakthrough, which means it can defend better on the attack. That's another thing I forgot to mention. These tend to have really high breakthrough. They're not great on actual defense, but they've got really, really good breakthrough, meaning that when they're on the attack, they perform better than when they're sitting there defending a location. Alright, so that's the basics of that taken care of. Support battalions. Now, support battalions are, as I said, the width-free bonuses that you can add to your divisions to give them more staying power or to specialize them in different areas. You've got, first at the top, you've got your engineer company. This will give you better attack against negative terrains as well as a bit of extra defense in them. It'll let you move through different areas a lot better as well. It also gives you a bit of extra digging in power. Every improvement will increase the entrenchment by 200%. So it's 5 here, 200% of 5 I believe takes 15, and then it's 25, and then it's 35. Which, that's huge. If you've got a really, really important point you need to defend, you don't have enough men to punch out, getting the engineers in and digging in will give you a higher staying power to protect that area. Here is the recon. It is, as I said, it adds reconnaissance, which is exceedingly important for getting you another attempt at successfully countering the enemy's tactic. Now, with recon, it also adds movement speed, but every recon improvement just adds more reconnaissance, not any more movement speed. Movement speed is very, very useful as well. If you're going to be using stuff like tanks and the like, it can speed up your movement through different areas. If you're moving through planes, it'll give you 10% extra movement. So if your speed was 12, get 10%, you get an extra 1.2, you're moving at 13.2%, you just go vroom, very, very fast. Recon is the ability to scout ahead and choose the right path, so to speak. Alright, military police. These guys have a suppression bonus. That's about all they're really used for. They are a bonus percent to your unit. So if you're using cavalry, you've got 5 units of cavalry, so 10. A default version of the military police will add 20% extra to it, and every percent above will add an extra 10. So in the end, it's at 30%, 20, 30, 40, 50, 50%. Yeah. So instead of your horses being all worth 2, they're all now worth 3 once at the end, which means you need less men to hold down an area. Very, very important if you're starting to get a bit manpower starved and you don't really have the men to have sitting back, you need more on the front lines. Okay, you've got the motorized here, which shows that it locks down everything in here, which is fine. Field hospitals. This gives you your trickle back and your retention, your experience retention. It starts at 20% trickle back and 10% experience loss reduction, so you lose 10% less experience. Awesome. But the trickle back's the most important part. So 1 in every 5 units that are injured will be able to make it back to the front line. And as it goes on, it's 10-10 for each of them. After that, we've got the logistics company. This is your ability. This company lowers your supply usage. Very, very important if you're making an offense and you're starting to run out of supplies. Throwing a logistics company on there will reduce the demand each unit will have. 10% doesn't seem like much, but it's an extra 10% off per level. So in the end, you're only using 6/10 of your default amount of resources, fuel and the like. It prevents waste and means you can fit more troops into an area that would otherwise not be able to support them due to infrastructure or other such things that are limiting you. I tend to find these aren't that useful, and I tend to just build infrastructure as I go where I need it. But if for whatever reason that wasn't an option, like I don't have much in the way of the civilian factories, then a logistic company can be an absolute godsend. And it's great in Africa. Absolutely amazing in Africa, where you get next to no supply and the infrastructure is crap. Alright, next, radios block the access to the next one, but this is signal companies. This is the ability for you to bring your troops into the fight from the reserves. If you add a signal company, you will in fact, you will add a 5% extra chance per hour that the unit will be able to reinforce to the front line. 5%, that's as much as a radio. Yes, so you're essentially doubling your radio's bonus by dumping these guys in there. It may take up a support little section, but honestly, completely fine. Doesn't matter in the slightest. The support company is very useful in the end, because you got 5, 8, 11, 14%, plus radios, 19%, plus the 2% base rate, so you're now at 21%, and then once you go a little bit further, say down some of the troop doctrine trees, you can get your reinforcement rate up to about 23% chance per hour a division will reinforce. Exceedingly important if you're in a battle, especially a defensive battle where you've got a decent number of troops. The enemy are knocking troops out really fast, but you're knocking theirs out really fast. You get the men into the next province ready to fight, and they've got a really high chance of getting in there and making sure that you guys don't break and flee. Because even if you've got units that are at full organization when a battle is going, if all of the troops on the front line at the top part break, then it doesn't matter if you've got like 50 or 100 units there, they all retreat. So being able to get them in is exceedingly important. It's also important on attacks. When you attack into an enemy, being able to get more of your men into the attack quickly means that you continue to put the damage down on the defenders really quickly. Exceedingly useful, because anytime you've got a gap in the front line as an attacker, if you're not putting the damage down, the defenders have got a far easier time of defending than you do of attacking. And an attack also stops if all of the frontline attackers are knocked out, even if you've got 60 or 70 troops waiting there to reinforce the battle to go and stab some guys. Doesn't matter. Okay, infantry. We've got your, let's go down the bottom first. We've got special forces. We've got paratroopers. These are the guys you will be dropping from airplanes to, in behind enemy divisions or strategic points to try and cut people off or to encircle and overrun people. Very, very useful. Require a transport plane, can be dropped nice and quickly, doesn't take any preparation time, goes really, really fast. Okay, up next we've got mountaineers. These are your mountain troops. They attack better into mountains, they defend slightly better if we have a quick look. Well, they move faster, they attack better, and they defend better. They are far better at attacking into mountains than the bonus they get to defending in mountains. A Mountaineer division attacking into mountains gets 35% attack bonus, which is big since mountains give a 50% penalty. So attacking into a mountains is way, way, way safer for a Mountaineer unit to do than an infantry unit. They've also got really high organization by default, and they use the same infantry equipment, so they've got most of the same stats. They've got a slight improvement to some bits and pieces, but it's mostly the same stats from the equipment. Okay, finally we've got Marines. Marines are your naval invasion guys. These, yeah, soft attack. These are what you use to attack over rivers, amphibiously, or even through marshes. these guys use the ribs, the rigid inflatable boats, as well as having all the proper equipment in place to be able to attack where there's water. If there's water, they do well. They don't add any bonus to defending, so a marine defending against an attacking marine gets no bonus whatsoever, but it does get a huge bonus to attack, which is huge on amphibious, which takes an insane penalty. Marines get a 50% bonus to attack. That's huge. And amphibious is something like up to 60 to 80%. It can be even higher depending on the unit composition. So having Marines do the attack means you don't lose anywhere near the number of troops you otherwise would. You can also be relatively assured of taking it because you're actually being able to do damage out. Alright, Motorized. This is infantry with trucks. These are just really, really fast versions of the infantry that require a bit more men, a bit more equipment, and a bunch of trucks to be able to drive around. Infantry and motorized can essentially be used interchangeably. There is some bonuses from Land Doctrine that is different for the two, so if you're focusing down one path more than the other, then you might think I need to use a lot more ground infantry and have some motorized for just quick movements. Or if you're focusing on a lot of the motorized stuff, you're like, I'll replace most of my infantry with motorized. Sure, it's going to be hella expensive getting everybody trucks, but I can do it. Alright, after that we've got up here the variant, which is motorized rocket artillery. This is rocket artillery that can keep up with the trucks. It's very simple, it's easy as that. Usually you'll be using a bit of light tanks with it if you really want, but later on, once the rocket artillery techs start coming to play, which is over here, then these will be a far better option than... Yeah, these will be a far better option than the light tank variants to be able to keep up with it. Alright, after that you got mechanized. This is hard shell infantry. It's like motorized, but different. The first one is relatively slow, it can't keep up with light tanks, but it's very good to be going with the 41 variants of heavy tanks. If you've got mechanized running alongside the heavy tanks, then you've got a lot of hardness, a lot of attack and defense, and your units will fight quite well. And the only thing that'll be slowing you down is the heavy tanks you've got. If we have a look, the hardness of these is 50%. So it receives half of the soft attacks, half of the hard attacks. Max speed, 8k, breakthrough 4, defense 26. It's infantry with a bit of armor and hardness. That's it. That's pretty much all you really need to worry about. It does also have a bit of piercing as well, which is frankly awesome, but a lot of the stats come from the infantry equipment that it will be using. Mechanized 2 is like Mechanized 1, but faster, a bit harder, and more armor. So it's that, but better in just about every way. Mechanized 3 is the same. You can also see that Mechanized 3 will give you soft and hard attack upgrades as well. So this will be very useful for improving the mechanized troops you've got. Okay, a lot of the upgrades through here, you can see cavalry, motorized, mechanized will get the upgrades. By this part of the end, by about 45, you're probably going to want a lot of mechanized troops. They have a lot of armor, they've got good punching power, and they should be starting to replace your infantry. Hell, I would start replacing them about 43. Mechanized 2 is amazing. Especially against the AI, who has a lot of trouble getting enough hardness to... not hardness. Well, it doesn't have enough hard attack to hit you, and it also doesn't end up with enough piercing to be able to get through your armor. Oh, well, that was an absolute mammoth overview of all of the units. That took an hour. Jeez. But yeah, that is units. The defaults of units as well as composition. I really should have split that. Probably still can on YouTube. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me. I haven't really progressed anywhere on the actual timeline. That's fine, I'll be going over other stuff like amphibious assaults, air plans, and other such fun stuff. While I have the timer going next time, I'll be talking about the different tech trees, well, not tech trees, the different nations' trees, as well as attack variants. I'll also be going over plans, exercising, and I should be also playing around with Spanish Civil War. So the next episode will be completely fine to use the exact same save game as this episode. Will at the start do a quick, okay, use the save game from there, here, and we'll be right to go. Thank you very much for joining me. I am Hydronum. This is Italy. I haven't taken a step anywhere today on the clock, well, a slight bit, but yeah, all well and good. I think we are no, I might throw it up. No, it's fine. I should be back in a couple of days with the next one, which, as I said, will do more of your plans. Okay, thanks for coming. Bye bye.